The crystal walls of the great hall sparkled like diamonds in the purple light of Zelthara's twin suns. Kethvara stood in the center of the room, her translucent skin glowing with a faint blue light that marked her as one of the Vorthak people. Around her, 12 elders sat on thrones made from living crystal that grew from the floor itself. Elder Zephan rose from his seat, his ancient face carved from what looked like frozen starlight. His voice echoed through the hall like breaking glass. Kethvara of the Third Spire, you have served our people for 47 cycles. Your mind has created wonders that have advanced our civilization, yet you carry within you the greatest shame our kind can know. Kethvara kept her eyes forward. She had known this day would come. For decades, she had watched her peers grow, full with child after child, their bodies glowing with the sacred light of creation. She had tried every treatment, every ritual, every prayer to the crystal mothers. Nothing had worked. Her body remained empty, barren as the dead moons that circled their world. You have failed in your most basic duty, Zephan continued. The purpose of every Vorthak is to create new life, to pass on the perfect genes of our ancestors. You have wasted the gifts given to you by the first shapers. The other elders nodded in agreement. Their crystal faces showed no emotion, but Kethvara could feel their disgust like cold wind against her skin. In their eyes, she was no longer Vorthak. She was something broken, something that should never have existed. I have given everything to our people, Kethvara said quietly. My quantum drives power our ships. My biocomputers run our cities. My research has... Your research means nothing, Zephan cut her off. A mind that cannot create life is a mind that serves no purpose. You are a dead branch on the tree of our people. Kethvara felt something break inside her chest. She had expected this, but hearing the words still hurt. All her life, she had worked twice as hard as everyone else, hoping that her contributions would make up for her failing. She had been foolish to think it would matter. The sentence is clear, Zephan announced. You will be given to the living glass. Your consciousness will be preserved for all time, but your body will be sealed away where it can do no more harm. Future generations will look upon you and remember the price of failure. 2 guards moved forward, their crystal armor ringing like bells with each step. Kethvara did not resist as they led her from the hall. The corridors of the great temple were filled with citizens who had come to witness her shame. They stepped back as she passed, as if her condition might spread to them. The Hall of Shame sat beneath the temple, a vast underground chamber lined with glass cases. Each case held a Vorthak who had failed in some fundamental way. Most were like her, unable to bear children. Others had committed crimes against the sacred laws of reproduction. All of them stared out with eyes that still held consciousness, but could no longer affect the world around them. The newest case waited in the center of the room. It was made from the clearest glass Kethvara had ever seen, grown from living crystal, and shaped by master craftsmen. Inside, it was fitted with tubes and wires that would keep her body alive indefinitely while preventing any movement. Step inside, one of the guards commanded. Kethvara looked around the chamber one last time. Dozens of faces stared back at her from their glass prisons. Some had been here for centuries. All of them had once been people with hopes and dreams, reduced to objects of shame. She stepped into the case. The glass began to grow around her immediately, sealing her feet to the floor, then her legs, then her waist. The tubes inserted themselves into her body with surgical precision, connecting to her blood vessels and nervous system. She felt her connection to the outside world growing weaker as the glass climbed higher. Remember this day, Zephan said from outside the case. Remember that talent without purpose is meaningless. Genius without fertility is just another form of death. The glass covered her chest, her neck, her chin. As it reached her mouth, Kethvara wanted to scream, to curse them all for their cruelty. Instead, she remained silent. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The glass covered her completely, and the world became muffled and distant. She could still see, still think, still feel every sensation in her body. But she could not move. could not speak, could not touch anything beyond the walls of her prison. Hours passed, then days. The crystal chamber was placed in a position of honor among the other failures, where visitors could see her clearly. Groups of young Vorthak were brought to look at her, to learn what happened to those who could not fulfill their biological destiny. Kethavara watched them all. She memorized their faces, their words, their casual cruelty. Some spit on her case, others made jokes about her condition. A few, very few, looked at her with something that might have been pity. Years went by. Seasons changed beyond the walls of the underground chamber. Kethavara felt her mind growing sharp in some ways and dull in others. Without the ability to work, to create, to solve problems, parts of her consciousness began to fade. But her intelligence remained, and with it, her anger. She began to plan, not for escape, that was impossible, but for the day when someone might listen to her, might value what she knew rather than what she could not do. She held on to her knowledge like a precious treasure, keeping every detail of her research clear in her memory. The Vorthak believed they had ended her story by putting her in glass. But Kethavara knew better. Stories did not end when the book was closed. They waited, sometimes for centuries, for someone to open them again. She would wait. She would remember. And someday perhaps someone would give her the chance to prove that a mind could create life in ways her people had never imagined. The glass prison held her body, but her thoughts remained free, in the darkness of the Hall of Shame, surrounded by the crystalline remains of other failures. Kethavara began to dream of a different kind of future. 23 years had passed since Kethavara was sealed in glass when the humans arrived. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the planet Zeltara grow larger on the main screen. The crystal cities sparkled like jewels against the purple landscape, more beautiful than anything in human space. This was humanity's first official contact with the Vorthak, and she wanted everything to go perfectly. "Dr. Rodriguez, are you ready for this?" she asked. Sam Rodriguez looked up from his tablet, where he was reviewing everything they knew about Vorthak culture. It was not much. The crystalline people had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and their first message to humanity had been formal and cold. "As ready as I can be," Sam replied. "Their language is complex, but our computers have done a good job translating their transmissions. They seem to value genetic purity and reproductive success above all else." Lisa frowned. "That could make things difficult. Human cultures are pretty mixed on those topics." The ship entered orbit around Zelthara, and soon a delegation of Vorthak officials came aboard. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like colored glass and voices that sounded like wind chimes. Elder Zephan led the group, his ancient face showing polite interest but no real warmth. "Welcome to our system," Zephan said through the translation device. "We are curious to learn about your species and your achievements." The tour of the human ship went well. The Vorthak were impressed by human technology, especially their medical equipment and genetic databases, but Sam noticed they seemed puzzled by certain things like the presence of older crew members who were past reproductive age, and humans with obvious physical disabilities who still held important positions. "Your species is diverse," Zephan observed carefully. "We believe diversity makes us stronger," Lisa replied. "Every person has something valuable to contribute." Something flickered across Zephan's crystalline features, but he said nothing more. The next day, the human delegation visited the Vorthak capital city. Sam was amazed by the architecture. Buildings grown from living crystal that changed color with the time of day. Everything was beautiful, clean, and perfect. "We would like to show you our Hall of Achievement," Zephan said, leading them through broad streets filled with tall, healthy-looking Vorthak. "It contains the greatest treasures of our civilization." But Sam was more interested in a smaller building they passed along the way. "What's that place?" he asked, pointing to a structure that seemed somehow darker than the others. Zephan hesitated. "That is the Hall of Shame. It contains failures. Things better left forgotten." "Failures?" Sam's curiosity was immediately aroused. As a scientist, he found failures often more interesting than successes. Perhaps we could see it? Lisa suggested. To better understand your culture. Zefhan looked uncomfortable, but diplomatic protocol required him to show his guests anything they requested. If you insist. But these are not pleasant sights. The Hall of Shame was underground, reached by crystal stairs that spiraled down into darkness. As they descended, Sam could hear a faint humming sound, like electricity running through water. The main chamber took his breath away. Dozens of glass cases lined the walls, each containing a perfectly preserved Vorthak. Their eyes were open, following the movements of the visitors with clear intelligence. These are criminals? Lisa asked. Worse than criminals, Zefhan replied. These are genetic failures. Individuals who could not fulfill their basic biological purpose. They serve as warnings to future generations. Sam approached one of the cases, drawn by something he could not explain. Inside was a female Vorthak with intricate patterns of light flowing beneath her skin. Unlike the others, she did not look away when he met her eyes. What did she do? He asked. Kethevara was once a brilliant scientist, Zefhan said with distaste. She made significant contributions to our technology, but she was infertile. Her body could not create life, making all her other achievements meaningless. Sam stared at the elder in shock. You imprisoned her for being infertile? She was a dead end in the great chain of existence, Zefhan explained. To allow such individuals to participate in society would contaminate our genetic heritage. But she was a scientist, Sam protested. Think of what she might have discovered if she had been free to continue her work. Work without the ability to pass on genes is empty labor, Zefhan replied coldly. Your species clearly thinks differently, but we have maintained genetic purity for millennia using these methods. Sam looked back at Kethvara. Her eyes were fixed on him now, and he could swear he saw hope in them. Acting on impulse, he pulled out his translation device and placed it against the glass. Can you hear me? He whispered. The response came as a faint vibration through the glass, picked up by the device's sensors. Yes, you are human. I'm Dr. Sam Rodriguez. I'm sorry for what they did to you. Kethevara's eyes widened. In 23 years, no one had ever spoken to her as if she were still a person. Your work, Sam continued quietly. What kind of research did you do? Quantum biology, bioengineering. I was developing new ways to create life in artificial environments. Sam's heart began to race. This was exactly the kind of research humanity needed for colonizing hostile worlds. And they had locked her away for being unable to have children. Dr. Rodriguez, Lisa called from across the room. We should go. Sam reluctantly stepped away from the case, but not before whispering, I'll be back. That night, back on the New Horizon, Sam could not sleep. He kept thinking about Kethvara, trapped in glass for decades, simply because her body worked differently than others. The waste of it made him sick. He made a decision that would change both their lives. Moving quietly through the ship, Sam gathered supplies, a small communications device, a power cell, and a microtransmitter. If he could plant the device near Kethvara's case, they could communicate in private. The next morning, during another diplomatic visit, Sam excused himself and slipped away to the Hall of Shame. The chamber was empty except for the prisoners, in their glass cases. Working quickly, he attached the device to the base of Kethvara's case and activated it. Can you hear me now? He asked. Yes. Much clearer. Her voice came through tinged with wonder. Why are you helping me? Because you deserve better than this. Because intelligence and curiosity should be celebrated, not punished. For the first time in over 2 decades, Kethvara felt something like happiness. I have so much knowledge stored in my mind, she said. So many discoveries that could help both our peoples, but they will never let me share it. Then we'll have to find another way, Sam replied. I'm not giving up on you. As the human delegation prepared to leave Zelthara, Sam looked back at the crystal cities with new eyes. They were still beautiful, but now he could see the ugliness hidden beneath the perfect surface. Somewhere below the ground, a brilliant mind, weighted in glass, dreaming of freedom and the chance to create life in ways her captors could never imagine. The communication device worked perfectly. Every few days, when the Hall of Shame was empty, Sam would contact Kethvara through encrypted transmissions that bounced off relay satellites hidden in the asteroid belt around Zelthara. At first, their conversations were simple. Sam told her about human culture, about worlds where people with disabilities were respected scientists and leaders. Kethvara shared stories of her life before the glass prison, her research, her dreams of discovery. "Your species sounds remarkable," Kethvara said during one of their talks. "You value individuals for what they contribute, not just for their ability to reproduce." "Most of us do," Sam replied. "We learned long ago that diversity makes us stronger. Some of our greatest discoveries came from people who were considered outcasts or failures by their own societies." "I wish I could have been born human," she whispered. "I wish you could visit our worlds," Sam said. "You would love our research stations. Scientists from dozens of different backgrounds working together, sharing ideas freely." As weeks turned to months, their conversations grew deeper. Kethvara began to share the details of her research, speaking of theories and discoveries that made Sam's mind race with possibilities. "Before my imprisonment, I was working on something revolutionary," she explained. "A way to create artificial biological matrices that could nurture new forms of life. Not just reproduction as my people understand it, but entirely new organisms, designed for specific environments." Sam nearly dropped his communication device. "You mean like terraforming organisms? Creatures that could transform hostile worlds into habitable ones?" "Exactly. And more than that. I envisioned beings that could survive in the vacuum of space, organisms that could break down radiation, living computers made from biological material. The possibilities were endless." "What happened to your research?" "The council declared it blasphemy. They said only the first shapers had the right to create new life. My laboratory was destroyed, my notes burned. They said I was trying to play God because I could not be a proper mother." Sam felt anger burning in his chest. The waste was criminal. While humanity struggled to establish colonies on marginal worlds, the solution might have been trapped in glass beneath a Vorthak temple. "Could you recreate the research?" he asked. "Every detail is preserved in my memory. 23 years of isolation have given me time to refine the theories, to imagine new applications. I have planned experiments that could revolutionize how both our species approach life itself." That night, Sam lay awake staring at the ceiling of his quarters. The more he learned about Kethvara, the more convinced he became that she represented one of the greatest scientific minds of either species. And she was rotting away in a glass box because of biological prejudice. He began to formulate a plan. Captain Martinez noticed his distraction during their regular staff meetings. "Sam, you seem preoccupied lately. Is everything all right?" "Just thinking about our mission to Zelthara," he replied carefully. "Some of their cultural practices are troubling." "The genetic purity obsession?" Lisa nodded. "It reminds me of some of the darker periods in human history, but it's not our place to judge how other species organize their societies." Sam wanted to argue, but he knew she was right from a diplomatic standpoint. Officially, humanity had to respect Vorthak customs, no matter how cruel they seemed. But unofficially, things could be different. Sam began reaching out to old friends and colleagues, people who shared his views on scientific freedom and individual rights. Dr. Amy Chen on the engineering deck was sympathetic when he carefully explained the situation. "You're talking about extracting a political prisoner from an alien world," she said quietly. "That's an act of war." "I'm talking about rescuing a scientist from persecution," Sam corrected. "Someone who could advance both our species by decades." Amy was quiet for a long moment. "What would you need?" "A fast ship with stealth capabilities, a small crew of volunteers, and equipment to safely extract someone from a crystalline matrix." "That's asking a lot." "I know. But think about what we could gain. Her research could solve our colonization problems, maybe even help us understand consciousness itself. Meanwhile, Kethvara's situation was becoming more precarious. Elder Zephon had grown suspicious of human interest in Vorthak culture, particularly their questions about the Hall of Shame. "The humans show too much curiosity about our failures," he told his fellow council members. "They seem to think these genetic dead ends have value. Perhaps we should limit their access to sensitive areas," another elder suggested. "Yes, and increase monitoring of the hall. I would not put it past these aliens to attempt some foolish rescue mission." Kethvara felt vibrations through her case as security devices were installed around the chamber. When she told Sam about the increased surveillance, his response was immediate. "We need to move faster than planned. Can you give me detailed layouts of the temple complex?" "Why?" "Because I'm going to get you out of there." For a moment, Kethvara could not respond. After so many years of hopelessness, the idea of freedom seemed impossible to believe. "Sam, the risks are too great. If you are caught, it could mean war between our species." "Some things are worth the risk," he replied. "Besides, I'm not going in alone. I have friends who believe in what we're doing." Over the following weeks, Sam assembled his team. Amy Chen agreed to help design stealth modifications for a scout ship. Jake Thompson, a navigation officer who had grown up on a frontier world where cooperation meant survival, volunteered to pilot the mission. Dr. Kate Sullivan, a medical officer who specialized in treating alien physiology, joined to handle the extraction procedure. All of them understood the consequences if they were caught. "We're not just rescuing one person," Sam told them during their first planning meeting. "We're making a statement about the value of knowledge and the rights of individuals to pursue their potential." "Very noble," Jake said with a grin. "But let's make sure we don't get shot down making that statement." As they refined their plans, Sam continued his conversations with Kethvara. He told her about Earth, about the diversity of human cultures, about scientists who had overcome incredible odds to make breakthrough discoveries. "When you are free," he said, "you can establish your own laboratory. Research whatever you want. Share your discoveries with whoever will listen." "If I am freed," Kethvara corrected. "This plan is dangerous, Sam. You could lose everything." "I've already lost too much time knowing you were suffering in that prison," he replied. "Whatever happens next, at least we'll have tried." In the crystal chamber beneath Zelthara's surface, Kethvara felt something she had not experienced in over 2 decades. Hope for the future. The glass walls that had seemed like her tomb now felt like a chrysalis, waiting for the right moment to crack open and release whatever she might become. The rescue was coming, and with it, the chance to prove that motherhood could take forms her people had never imagined. 6 months after first contact, a small human ship appeared in the outer regions of the Zelthara system. It was barely larger than a shuttle, its hull coated with experimental stealth materials that bent light around it like a mirage. Sam checked his equipment one final time. The plasma cutters were calibrated for Vorthak crystal. The medical stabilization unit was programmed with everything they knew about crystalline physiology, and the extraction pod was designed to maintain a controlled environment during transport. "How are we looking, Amy?" he asked. Amy Chen looked up from her console, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air. "Stealth systems are holding. We're invisible to their sensors, but this technology is still experimental. We might have 2 hours before the coating starts to break down." Jake Thompson piloted the ship through the asteroid field that surrounded Zelthara, using the rocky debris to mask their approach. "I've got us a landing site about 3 kilometers from the temple complex. We'll have to go in on foot." Dr. Kate Sullivan was preparing the medical bay for their passenger. "I've studied every piece of data we have about Vorthak biology," she said. "But extracting someone who's been in stasis for over 20 years, there are too many unknowns." "We'll figure it out as we go," Sam replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They landed during the Festival of First Light, when all of Zelthara celebrated the beginning of their reproductive season. The crystal cities blazed with celebration, and most of the population was gathered in public squares for the ceremonies. The team moved through empty streets, their footsteps echoing off crystal buildings. Sam led them along the route he had memorized from Kethvara's descriptions, avoiding the main thoroughfares where automated security might still be active. The temple complex loomed ahead of them, its spires reaching toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. During the festival, only minimal guards were posted, and those were focused on protecting the sacred artifacts in the upper levels. "Remember, we need to be quiet until we reach the Hall of Shame," Sam whispered as they approached, a service entrance. Any alarm could bring the entire city guard. Amy made quick work of the door's electronic lock, her tools interfacing with the alien technology in ways their creators had never intended. The corridors inside were dimly lit, carved from living crystal that pulsed with its own inner light. They descended the spiral stairs toward the underground chamber, their equipment bags weighing heavily on their shoulders. With each step, Sam felt his heart beating faster. After months of planning, they were finally here. The Hall of Shame was exactly as Sam remembered it. Dozens of glass cases lined the walls, each containing a Vorthak who had somehow failed to meet their society's impossible standards. Their eyes tracked the intruders with mixture of hope and terror. Kethvara's case stood in the center of the chamber, clearly marked as a special exhibit. When she saw Sam, her face lit up with an expression of joy that made all the risks worthwhile. "Hello, Kethvara," Sam said, placing his hand against the glass. "Ready to get out of there?" Her response came through the communication device they had left behind. "I have been ready for 23 years. Kate began setting up the medical equipment while Amy and Jake positioned the plasma cutters around the base of the case. The extraction would require precise cuts to avoid damaging the life support systems that had kept Kethvara alive for so long. "The glass is reinforced with quantum matrices," Amy reported. "This is going to take longer than we hoped." "How much longer?" Jake asked, glancing nervously at the chamber entrance. "At least 30 minutes. Maybe more." Sam felt his stomach clench. They had planned for a quick extraction, not an extended operation that would leave them vulnerable to discovery. The plasma cutters began their work, sending sparks of superheated energy through the crystal matrix. The smell of burning silicon filled the air, and the other prisoners in their cases began to show signs of agitation. "They know something's happening," Kate observed, watching their eyes follow every movement. Halfway through the cutting process, alarms began to sound throughout the temple complex. Not the security alarms they had feared, but the festival bells that marked the height of the celebration above. "That should cover the noise," Jake said with relief. But their relief was short-lived. Footsteps echoed from the stairs above, growing closer with each passing second. "Someone's coming," Amy hissed. Sam looked at the half-completed cuts around Kethvara's case. They were so close, but there was no way to speed up the process without risking her life. "Keep working," he decided. "I'll handle whoever's coming." A Vorthak guard appeared at the chamber entrance, his crystal armor gleaming in the dim light. He stopped short when he saw the humans, confusion quickly turning to alarm. "Intruders!" he shouted, reaching for his communication device. Sam tackled him before he could raise the alarm, both of them crashing to the floor in a tangle of limbs and equipment. The guard was stronger, but Sam was more desperate. They rolled across the crystal floor, fighting for control of the communication device. Jake left his position to help, but more guards were already coming down the stairs. "We've got company!" The plasma cutters were almost finished, but Kethvara's case was still sealed. Kate worked frantically to prepare the extraction procedures while Amy tried to accelerate the cutting process. "There!" Amy shouted as the final cut completed. "The case is open." But extracting Kethvara proved more complicated than anyone had expected. Her body had adapted to the life support systems over decades, and simply removing her could cause fatal shock. "Her nervous system is integrated with the case's biomonitors," Kate said, her hands flying over the medical scanner. "If we disconnect her too quickly, we could kill her." More guards poured into the chamber, led by Elder Zephahan himself. His crystalline face was twisted with rage as he surveyed the scene. "Stop this sacrilege immediately," he commanded. "You have violated the most sacred laws of our people. We're saving someone who never should have been imprisoned." Sam shot back, still struggling with the first guard. "She is a genetic failure, a contamination that must be contained." Kate found a solution to the extraction problem, but it would require several minutes of delicate work to safely disconnect all the biomonitors. Sam, I need time. Jake and Amy formed a defensive line between the medical team and the growing number of guards. The humans had superior technology, but they were vastly outnumbered. Stand down or face the consequences, Zephan warned. We're not leaving without her, Sam replied. The elder raised his hand, and the guards prepared to attack. But at that moment, Kate successfully extracted Kethvara from her glass prison. After 23 years of imprisonment, she was free. Her legs couldn't support her weight, and her skin was pale from decades without sunlight, but her eyes were bright with consciousness and determination. Go, she whispered to Sam. I can walk. The escape from the temple was chaos. Guards pursued them through crystal corridors, while alarms wailed throughout the complex. Jake carried Kethvara when her strength failed, while Amy and Sam fought a running battle with their pursuers. They reached their ship just as the stealth coating began to fail. Jake threw the ship into the air while Kate worked to stabilize Kethvara's vital signs in the medical bay. Vorthak security ships gave chase as they fled toward the system's edge, their crystal hulls gleaming like angry stars against the darkness of space. Jake pushed their small vessel to its limits, weaving between asteroids and using every trick he knew to stay ahead of their pursuers. Jump drive is ready, Amy announced. But I don't know if she'll survive the transition in her current condition. Sam looked down at Kethvara, who lay unconscious on the medical table. After everything they had been through, they couldn't lose her now. Do it, he said. She's tougher than she looks. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Vorthak fleet far behind. In the medical bay, Kethvara's eyes fluttered open and found Sam's face. Did we make it? She asked weakly. We made it, Sam confirmed. You're free. For the first time in over 2 decades, Kethvara smiled. The medical ship Mercy's Grace was humanity's most advanced hospital vessel, equipped to treat patients from dozens of different species. When Sam's team arrived with Kethvara, Dr. Kate Sullivan immediately transferred her to the ship's specialized care unit. Her condition is worse than we thought, Kate told Sam after the first full examination. 23 years in that glass prison has affected every system in her body. Her muscles have atrophied, her bones have weakened, and her nervous system shows signs of severe stress. Sam stood beside Kethvara's bed, watching the monitors track her vital signs. Even unconscious, her face showed lines of pain that had nothing to do with physical discomfort. Will she recover? He asked. Physically, yes. With time and therapy, she should regain most of her strength. But the psychological trauma, Kate shook her head. That might take much longer to heal. For 3 days, Kethvara drifted in and out of consciousness. When she was awake, she would panic, thinking she was still trapped in glass. Kate had to sedate her several times when the panic attacks became too severe. On the 4th day, she woke up clear-headed for the first time since the rescue. Sam, she called weakly. He was beside her bed immediately. I'm here. You're safe. You're on a human medical ship. Kethvara looked around at the white walls and humming equipment. Everything was so different from the crystal architecture of her homeworld. This is real? I'm truly free? As free as anyone in the galaxy, Sam assured her. Over the following weeks, Kethvara slowly regained her physical strength. But more importantly, she began to experience human culture for the first time. The medical staff treated her with kindness and respect, never once asking about her fertility or genetic fitness. Dr. Maria Santos, the ship's chief psychologist, spent hours with Kethvara, helping her process decades of trauma. Your people defined you by one biological function, Maria said during one of their sessions. But humans believe every person has multiple forms of value. It is difficult to believe after so long, Kethvara admitted. On Zelthara, I was taught that my mind was worthless without the ability to create offspring. Your mind created technologies that advanced your entire civilization, Maria pointed out. How is that worthless? Kethvara had no answer because, for the first time in her life, the question made sense. As her strength returned, Sam began sharing his plans for the future. I want to establish a research station where you can continue your work, he explained. A place where you'll have complete freedom to pursue your theories about artificial biological matrices. You would do that for me? I would do that for science. And for the future of both our species. But their plans faced a significant obstacle. The Vorthak government had declared the humans enemies of their state and demanded Kethvara's return. Diplomatic pressure was mounting on the human government to comply with their demands. Admiral Rebecca Stone, the head of Human Diplomatic Corps, arrived on the Mercy's Grace to assess the situation personally. She was a stern woman who had spent her career maintaining peace between human colonies and alien civilizations. Dr. Rodriguez, your unauthorized rescue mission has created a serious diplomatic incident, she said during their first meeting. The Vorthak are threatening to break off all relations with humanity unless we return their citizen immediately. Kethvara isn't their citizen anymore, Sam argued. She's a refugee seeking asylum from persecution. That's not how the Vorthak see it. To them, she's a criminal who escaped justice. Justice? Sam's voice rose with anger. They imprisoned her for being infertile. That's not justice. That's barbarism. Admiral Stone studied Kethvara, who sat quietly beside Sam during the heated exchange. What do you want? She asked the Vorthak woman directly. Kethvara looked up with eyes that had seen too much suffering. I want to create life, she said, simply. Not through reproduction as my people understand it, but through science. I want to build organisms that can help both our species explore the galaxy and make hostile worlds habitable. And if we send you back to Zelthara, I will spend eternity in a glass box, and my knowledge will die with me. The Admiral was quiet, for a long moment. Show me this research you're so eager to continue. Over the next several hours, Kethvara shared her theories about artificial biological matrices. Using the ship's computers, she created detailed models of organisms that could survive in extreme environments, creatures that could break down toxic compounds, and biological computers that could process information faster than any machine. Admiral Stone listened with growing amazement. These applications could revolutionize human colonization efforts, and they could help the Vorthak expand beyond their home system, Kethvara added. If they could see past their prejudices, my research could benefit everyone. The Admiral made her decision. Dr. Rodriguez, you're going to get your research station, but it will be classified, and officially, we'll claim that Kethvara died during the extraction process. You're willing to lie to the Vorthak government? I'm willing. To protect a valuable scientific asset from persecution, Admiral Stone corrected. Sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices. The research station was established on New Eden, a frontier world at the edge of human space. It was far from both Earth and Zelthara, isolated enough to avoid diplomatic complications, but close enough to supply lines to function effectively. Kethvara walked through her new laboratory for the first time 6 months after her rescue. The facility was larger and better equipped than anything she had ever imagined. Banks of computers hummed quietly, biological cultivation tanks lined the walls, and workstations were arranged to accommodate her unique physiology. This is my laboratory? She asked in wonder. This is your laboratory, Sam confirmed. You can research whatever you want, publish your findings, collaborate with scientists from across human space. The only requirement is that you share your discoveries with the scientific community. Kethvara ran her hands over the smooth surfaces of the equipment, marveling at the freedom to touch, to manipulate, to create. After so many years of forced inactivity, the ability to work felt almost overwhelming. I don't know where to begin, she admitted. Begin anywhere, Sam suggested. You have all the time in the galaxy. That night, Kethvara stood on the observation deck of the research station, looking out at the alien stars of human space. New Eden's 2 moons hung in the sky like silver coins, and the lights of the growing colonial settlement twinkled in the valley below. For the first time in over 2 decades, she felt truly alive. Her body was free, her mind was engaged, and the future stretched ahead of her full of infinite possibilities. Tomorrow, she would begin the work of creating life in forms her people had never imagined. She would become a mother to new species, a nurturer of organisms designed to explore the cosmos and bridge the gap between worlds. The glass prison had been meant to contain her failure, but instead, it had preserved her for this moment. Everything she had suffered, every year of isolation and despair, had led to this opportunity to prove that intelligence and creativity were forms of fertility that transcended biology. She was ready to begin again.
1 year after her rescue, Kethvara stood in her laboratory surrounded by wonders that would have been impossible on Zelthara. Dozens of biological cultivation tanks lined the walls, each one nurturing a different form of life she had created.
From raw genetic material. In Tank 7, organisms that looked like living crystals slowly grew, designed to break down radiation and convert it into usable energy for space stations. Tank 12 contained creatures that resembled jellyfish made of light, able to survive in the vacuum of space and communicate across vast distances through quantum entanglement. Her greatest achievement yet floated in the central tank, a being that combined the best aspects of human adaptability and Vorthak durability. It was still small, no larger than a human child, but its potential was enormous. "How is she developing?" Sam asked, joining Kethvara at the observation window. "Better than I dared hope," Kethvara replied, her voice filled with maternal pride. "I call her Zara. She can process multiple forms of radiation, adapt to extreme temperatures, and her nervous system is designed to interface directly with both human and Vorthak technology." Sam watched the small being float peacefully in its nurturing fluid. "Will she be conscious, self-aware?" "Oh yes. That is the most important part. Each of my children will have their own thoughts, their own dreams. They are not tools or machines, but new forms of life with the right to choose their own destinies." Over the past year, Kethvara had thrown herself into her work with an enthusiasm that amazed everyone on the research station. She worked 18 hours a day, taking breaks only when Sam or the other researchers forced her to rest. "You need to slow down," Dr. Kate Sullivan had warned her during a medical checkup. "Your body is still recovering from decades of imprisonment." "I have lost too much time already," Kethvara replied. "Every day that I delay is another day that both our species struggle with colonization challenges I could help solve." But it was more than professional dedication that drove her. For the first time in her life, Kethvara was experiencing the joy of creation, of nurturing new life into existence. Each successful organism filled her with a happiness she had never known existed. The research station had grown as well. Scientists from across human space had requested transfers to work with Kethvara, drawn by reports of her breakthrough discoveries. The facility now housed over 200 researchers from dozens of different specialties. Dr. Robert Kim, a genetic engineer from Mars, had become one of her closest collaborators. "Your approach to biological design is revolutionary," he told her during one of their joint sessions. "Most human scientists think in terms of modifying existing life forms. You create entirely new ones from first principles. The Vorthak believe that only the first shapers have the right to create life," Kethvara explained. "But I think consciousness itself is the real creative force in the universe. Every intelligent being has the potential to be a shaper." The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Zara opened her eyes for the first time. Unlike human or Vorthak infants, she was immediately aware and curious, her enhanced nervous system processing information at incredible speed. "Hello, little one," Kethvara whispered to the observation window. Zara turned toward her voice, her expression showing clear recognition despite being only days out of the cultivation tank. When she spoke, her voice came through the communication system as a mixture of musical tones that somehow conveyed meaning directly to the listener's mind. "Mother? Is that what I should call you?" Kethvara felt tears streaming down her crystalline cheeks. After 47 years of being told she was infertile, she was finally hearing someone call her mother. "If you wish to," she replied, "though you are free to choose any name for me that feels right to you." "Mother fits," Zara said, her childlike voice carrying surprising wisdom. "You created me, you nurtured me, and now you will guide me as I, learn about existence. What could be more maternal than that? Word of Zara's successful development spread quickly through the scientific community. Within weeks, delegations from major human colonies were visiting the research station to learn about Kethvara's techniques, but the news also reached less friendly ears. Elder Zefhan, monitoring human communications from Zelthara, learned that his people's greatest failure was being celebrated as humanity's greatest success. "She is creating abominations," he told the Crystal Council, "mixing the pure genetic heritage of the Vorthak with inferior human material. This blasphemy must be stopped. The humans will not return her to us," another elder pointed out. "They claim she died during the extraction. Then we must take more direct action," Zefhan decided. "Assemble a strike force. We will retrieve her ourselves and cleanse the galaxy of her perverted creations." On New Eden, Kethvara remained unaware of the growing threat. She was too busy with her expanding family of created beings. Zara had been joined by others, the navigators who could sense magnetic fields and guide ships through space, the builders who could manipulate matter at the molecular level, and the communicators who could translate between any two forms of consciousness. Each new being brought their own personality and interests. Some were curious about human culture. Others preferred to study Vorthak history through the genetic memories Kethvara had encoded in their structures. All of them called her mother, and all of them brought her joy she had never imagined possible. "I understand now why my people value reproduction so highly," she told Sam during one of their evening walks through the station's gardens. "Not because of genetic continuation, but because of the love that grows between creator and created." "You've found your own form of motherhood," Sam agreed, "one that transcends species boundaries." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms echoing through the facility. Amy Chen's voice came over the communication system. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have unidentified ships approaching at high velocity." The Vorthak strike force consisted of 12 crystal warships, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could shatter asteroids. They dropped out of hyperspace just beyond New Eden's orbital perimeter and immediately began broadcasting surrender demands. "Return the criminal Kethvara and destroy all evidence of her blasphemous research, Elder," Zefhan commanded. "Comply immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Stone, who had been visiting the station to review progress reports, took command of the defense. "All civilian personnel to the shelters. Research staff, prepare for emergency evacuation." But Kethvara refused to run. Standing in her laboratory with her created children around her, she made a choice that surprised everyone. "I will speak to them," she announced. The communication went out on all frequencies, ensuring that both the Vorthak fleet and human observers across the galaxy would hear her words. "Elder Zefhan, this is Kethvara. I know why you have come, but I will not return to your glass prison. I have found my purpose among the humans, creating life in ways you declared impossible." "Your abominations are an insult to the first shapers," Zefhan replied. "They must be destroyed, and you must answer for your crimes against genetic purity." "Look at what I have created," Kethvara said, gesturing to her children who stood beside her. "Zara can survive in environments that would kill either of our species. The navigators can guide ships through regions of space no one has ever explored. The builders can construct habitats on worlds too hostile for natural colonization." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "You called me infertile, but I have become mother to entire new forms of life. You said I was worthless, but my children will help both our species spread across the galaxy. Who is the real failure, Elder? Me, or those who waste the potential of their own people?" For a moment, there was silence on the communication channel. Then Zefhan's voice returned, filled with rage. "Enough. Your words are poison. Prepare to face judgment." But before the Vorthak ships could fire, something unexpected happened. Smaller vessels began emerging from hyperspace, bearing the markings of various Vorthak civilian organizations. Young Vorthak scientists who had been secretly monitoring human communications, individuals who had always questioned their societies, rigid genetic laws, and even some who had been deemed marginal by the Crystal Council. Elder Zephan, came a new voice, young and defiant. This is researcher Veltar of the Third Spire. We demand that you withdraw your forces and allow Kethvara to continue her work. You have no authority here, Zephan snapped. We have the authority of conscience, Veltar replied, and we are not alone. More ships appeared, dozens of them, carrying Vorthak, who had chosen to abandon their homeworld rather than accept its limitations. They had come to New Eden seeking the same thing Kethvara had found, the freedom to create without restriction. Faced with a growing rebellion among his own people, Elder Zephan was forced to withdraw his forces, but his final message carried a promise of future conflict. This is not over, Kethvara. Your corruption spreads, but it will not go unpunished forever. As the Vorthak warships disappeared into hyperspace, Kethvara stood surrounded by her created children and her new allies. The research station had become something more than a laboratory. It had become a symbol of what was possible when intelligence was valued over biology, when creativity was celebrated instead of suppressed. Zara took her,